everybody, and welcome to the Power of Youth session. I am so happy to be moderating this conversation. I'm going to start off by having all of our amazing speakers introduce themselves. Please tell us your name, your pronouns, and what school you attend. Christina, why don't you start?
Hi everyone, I'm Christina Williams. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I attend the illustrious Clark Atlanta University.
Thanks, Christina. Tamia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tamia Fowlkes. I'm a rising senior at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Thanks. Anusha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anusha Natarajan. I'm a rising junior at Arizona State University, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Thanks. And Brandon.
Hi, I am Brandon Daye, a third-year student at North Carolina A&T State University, and my pronouns are he, him, is.
Awesome, thank you so much. And my name is Wambui, my pronouns are she, her, and I am a senior program manager of movement strategy at the Goodman Foundation. And I am so happy to be moderating this discussion about the power of youth and young people in the movement to making democracy more accessible to young people and specifically. And who better to be talking with about this topic than young leaders that are all Andrew Goodman Foundation ambassadors and folks that are doing this work on the ground in their schools. I want to start off by asking everybody, how did you establish your civic blueprint on your campus? How did you get involved in civic engagement? And what tips would you give to students just starting out? So why don't we start off with Brandon?
All right, when establishing my civic blueprint on campus, I was charged with taking a task by our university's director of student development. And she told me, Brandon, I have this opportunity for you. It's within the Andrew Goodman Foundation. That was my freshman year. I'm a supply chain student at North Carolina A&T, and I didn't think civic engagement went along with my past. So she charged me with it and said, hey, I think this would be great for you in your development as a student. So I accepted the fellowship, the ambassadorship, and then I started educating myself on civic engagement and the entire democratic process. So then after I educated myself, I started having the much needed conversations to affect our community. I started walking in so many different spaces and maneuvering so many different ways with people to educate them on different ways on how to stay civically engaged. The tips I suggest for you to do is educate yourself on voter education, on what's happening in your community, stay abreast. Find your purpose and find your authentic self. That is one thing that's big with me, finding yourself, and you can do so many things that you would never think you can do. And also, if you find yourself, if you stay educated, you can also become a change agent in your community. Change agent and ambassador, you will leave your mark and impact in your community in every way you do. So that's a way to establish your civic blueprint on campus.
Awesome, thank you so much, Brandon. And I'm so happy that that director brought you here with us today. So that's really warms my heart. Tamia, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I came into the Andrew Goodman Foundation at the end of my freshman year. I was so excited to be an ambassador because I always have been really engaged and excited about politics. And so this was like the perfect opportunity for me to tie in my passion for working with students and being in conversation with them about the issues that we care about, and also getting people out to vote and feeling really engaged in my community. And so one of the things that I think is so amazing about this type of work is that you do get to connect with your peers. I think one of the things that we all probably can agree with is that, you know, when you're engaging with politics as a young person, it's hard to sometimes feel like you can make a space for yourself. And in doing this, we all kind of come together and create a space for ourselves. We make our voices heard. We talk to our legislators. We talk to people in our community, and we get them excited to participate in this kind of work. And for me, I think that's the most exciting thing. And the way that I got involved was just talking to people who were doing it already and trying to build connections and establish partnerships with other campus organizations already doing the work. And I think that as a collective, we have so much more power than we do as an individual. And that's kind of how we got started at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, creating the Batters Vote Coalition and just getting people excited about voting.
That's awesome. Anusha, how did you start your journey as a civic leader, and what tips would you give other students?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start a little bit back in high school. I was involved with my city's youth commission. I thought this was a great opportunity for me to, be actually a leader in my community and, help also engage other teens in my community as well. So I got to host the annual teen town hall that we have. So we broke out into different topics that are pertainable to the community today for teens. And then I also did a lot of civic activity in high school. I did We the People, which is a civic-based competition where you kind of have a debate in a way about the Constitution, especially aspects of the Constitution. And then coming into college, I wanted to keep that momentum up that I built in high school. So at our club fair that we had in the beginning week of classes, I would say accidentally, because it wasn't my intention to stumble up on them, but I stumbled up on a university nonprofit space called Changemaker Central. And it was where I was introduced that they had different committees focusing on change and just leadership in the community. So one of the committees that they had was a civic engagement committee. And I wanted to join that because all the different projects and opportunities that they were talking about, I wanted to get involved and also, kind of make an impact and presence on my campus. So I joined that, and then, I got along really well with the chair. And then my second semester, freshman year, I was continuing doing that. And she told me, hey, there's an opening at the, Andrew Goodman Fellows team here at ASU. I think you should go and apply for it. And I was like, yes, I definitely will. Very passionate about voter education. And I, wanted to do more work on that. So I decided to apply, ended up getting in. So I joined in my second semester of freshman year, and it's been great, especially this 2020 election has showed us, nothing can stop us regardless of the circumstances. We still found ways to mobilize young voters, and especially kids in our college campuses, on the importance of voting. And last year we brought in Hassan Minaj to come and speak, and also talk about voting and the importance of voting. And we also had a whole bunch of voter education efforts as well too. So what to look out in your ballot, the different ballot locations you should turn them into. And right now, as of currently, I am the co-chair of our civic engagement coalition that we have here on campus. And one of the goals that I hope to do is, translate some of the information that we have into different languages, because ASU is a vastly diverse campus, and we want to focus on accessibility and knowledge of the information so that everyone is being up to date on what's going on for voting.
That's awesome. And so happy to hear that your civic engagement journey has been since high school. So that's really great to hear. Christina, how did you make your civic blueprint, and what tips would you give students?
Yes, so my civic journey has actually been somewhat of an accident too. I really only intended on starting a conversation. I just felt that, and really my journey only started a year ago. I just felt that there wasn't enough conversations happening on my campus about the election that was coming up and why it was important and how students could be involved. I didn't see that there was any existing framework or organizations that were really spreading that message. And so I started with looking at who the stakeholders were on my campus, who the administrators were, who the student leaders were, who the students on my campus listened to and looked up to and interacted with the most. And I was able to reach out to every single student leader on my campus personally, the president of every organization, student government, athletes, everyone, and kind of pull them in and talk to them about what was important to them, what issues they cared about, and then connecting that to voting and the work that I was trying to do. And then I was fortunate enough by doing that to get connected to some outside organizations, including the Andrew Goodman Foundation, Campus Vote Project, Every Vote Counts, to really give me the training and the resources to be able to build that blueprint and start that foundation. And then moving forward, just being able to build from the ground up and reach out and include all types of students across campus and across different classifications, so that when we talk about building a blueprint, this is something that exists for classes and students that will come after me to continue to do this work. And just the advice that I have for other students is to look at what other work is already being done on your campus. And if you're not satisfied with that, or if there isn't any work being done, then start it yourself.
I love that. Always got to be entrepreneurial in this space, and I really can appreciate that framework that you brought to it. So thank you all for sharing. I want to think about, what were some of the challenges that you faced, especially last year as student voting leaders, and how did you ever overcome these challenges? I know on my end, just having a bird's eye view of all of the different campuses, and then also thinking about what's happening nationally, there are lots of different challenges that came up, but I would love to hear specifically from each person, what were some of the things that you faced as a campus and as a leader, and how did you organize your team around those challenges? Tamia, I'll start with you.
For sure. This past year, our Andrew Goodman team, as well as Badgers Vote, which is our overarching civic engagement coalition that we have on our campus to get students out to vote, we're working really hard to find different ways to engage with students on campus. We started a podcast, which was a really beneficial way to engage with them, to talk about issues that they cared about frequently and constantly be putting out content to inform them about what was happening in the world. That was a really successful way that we were able to get students engaged and giving us feedback on how they wanted to see things happen in elections and what type of policies they wanted to talk about. And in that same way, we also just increased our presence online. We didn't have any in-person classes or any in-person forums to have with students. And so for us, making sure that we were pulling in other students who were excited about this type of work was really critical to getting the message out. I think, when it's just coming from one person, it can be kind of annoying to see the same message popping up on your screen all the time. But I think the best part that we were able to do was to build community around voting and to really have everyone feel like they had stake in this election, and also that they could make an impact. I think that's so critical on every campus, is to increase your outreach to make other people feel involved and want them to join in the work. And I think that that's kind of one of the number one ways that we were able to do that.
I love that. And I can attest to the amazing podcast that y'all put together that actually inspired Asia's upcoming podcast, which is called Live the Legacy, and it's going to come out later this summer. So I love that idea. Super innovative. Brandon, how about you? What were some of the challenges that you saw, and how did y'all organize to overcome them? There we go.
I'm sorry, my internet was going out. But on the challenges of North Carolina A&T, one of the biggest challenges at our university was voter education. Voter education is important in every endeavor in life, but actually you have to get students registered for them to care about, get them engaged, get them registered, because one, if we're fighting for something greater, you have to know what you're fighting for. Engage, we have to continue to show up to the polls. We cannot continue to show up to the polls uneducated. So if we educate our students from gate, we register them, we educated them. So that's one thing. If we have that, then that piece will all come together. They'll get out there. We'll start different initiatives to get out there and vote. So basically, some of the things that we organized on campus here at North Carolina A&T for voter registration, what we did, we actually had a civic champion poll pal. So basically what that was, the civic champion program, we had over 100 civic champions, and where we taught how to engage students, how to educate them, and also how to register them on campus. So basically through that program, we had over 200 sessions of getting people registered. So we had split up over 100 students to register within so many different departments and clusters on campus. So that's why we were out there, we were experiencing people to vote, we were educating them, we're getting people excited to get out the vote. So that's one thing. Voter education is, you educate them, it can go so long, it can go such a long way. So that's what we did. We focused on voter education, and we've overcome so many different challenges, and our polling numbers showed for sure.
I love that. I love the idea of, we could do it ourselves, but let's train other people to be knowledgeable about that, and then kind of have that multiplied. So that's a really great vote tripling concept that I love that you've implemented. That's really awesome. Anusha, how about you? What were some of the tactics that y'all employed this year?
Yeah, definitely. I think the pandemic has impacted in so many ways, both positively and negatively, especially for us at ASU. We're such a big campus. We have 4 different campuses. So yeah, definitely we face some challenges along the way, especially trying to engage those students on the campuses that might be remote from the Tempe area. We have to think creatively outside the box. I know I mentioned in the previous question that we brought in Hassan Minaj, who used to host the Patriot Act, and he was talking about his personal experiences and motivating people on why they should vote. So I thought that was really helpful too, and we also offered resources for people to register to vote at that event. Luckily, it was online too, so that gave us flexibility to bring in a big name speaker. We also kind of did it in a hybrid format. So we had a couple kids go in person so that the technology would work well, and the streaming would be a lot more easier when they would ask the questions. And then we also, I think, Brandon mentioned this, but yeah, voter education events. I know we held a lot of those because usually we would be in person tabling and being like, hey, make sure to register to vote by these dates. Remember to vote on this date and watch out for these times, all sorts of things. But yeah, just because of the shift that we had to make, we did experiment with some virtual tabling, especially when it was Civic Engagement Week and National Voter Registration Day. We had a virtual tabling event. So I thought that was really great. And then we also, we usually have debate watch parties in person, but unfortunately, I think everyone was getting Zoom fatigue by then. So we unfortunately didn't have any watch parties especially for the Arizona Senate race that we had here. So, hopefully we can do that for the midterms. But yeah, nevertheless, yeah, we were doing a lot of work on voter education, and yeah, did a lot of social media and live streams like, hey, these are the top frequently asked questions. And yeah, we just wanted to, help students get information wherever they were, because we had students all over the place, all around the world. So.
I love that. Yeah, switching to virtual organizing is definitely something that we're going to be taking from this pandemic as a positive thing to move forward. Christina, how about you?
Yeah, so similar to the earlier answers, we were also completely remote for the entire academic year. So as you can imagine, we had to switch a lot of our organizing and outreach online. But one thing that I feel was a unique challenge that stemmed from that is that we had a lot of competing information from a lot of competing sources, because we do work with so many organizations, and because so many more students were getting their information online. There was just so much competing misinformation, disinformation, and with our students being spread out across the country, there are different laws in every state. So that was a challenge for us to kind of get students the correct information. But a few strategies that we did, we added a voter information webpage to our school's website so that students can go through and see, for where they are, what information is valid for them. Then we also used our coalition GroupMe, which consisted of all the student leaders that I mentioned earlier, and they would disseminate information directly to their clubs or to their groups. Because as Tamia mentioned, sometimes you don't want all your information coming from the same random person you've never met by email. You may trust someone that you talk to and that you know personally more often. So that was really effective for us.
I can totally attest to all the conflicting information during this election because I live in Georgia as well, and there's just so much going on. So I can only imagine what it was like to get that out to students as well. So appreciate that. One of our last questions that I wanted to talk about is what I really love about this group of students particularly is that y'all are students of color. You are organizing on your campus as a student of color, as someone that brings a really interesting perspective. And I kind of wanted to think about and ask you all, what were some of the ways that you organized and brought your own personal identities to your organizing work? What were some ways that you kind of approach things in a different way that maybe folks may have not thought of before? Anusha, let's start with you.
Yeah, certainly, for sure. I did wanted to mention this earlier, but I think this is a great question. I also wanted to target, especially like having these conversations about voting and civic engagement and tailor to each of the different communities that we have here at ASU. So we had Hispanic Heritage Month come up, and then I worked with the El Concilio Coalition that brings together a lot of Hispanic and Latina groups, and we basically had a conversation about like prominent Latino or Latina or even Latina politicians who are involved in their community. And then we brought in panelists from the university and even like specific voting organizations that focus on energizing the Hispanic and Latina communities. So we brought them on a panel, and we had like a Q&A, like what are some advice to be engaged on campus? How can we motivate people to get out and vote? Like, what are your strategies on like motivating people to register and vote. So I thought that was like one of the best events that we did, especially since it was kind of earlier on where people were still able to register to vote. We were able to advertise like, hey, here's a QR code, scan it, and you're able to register to vote. So we had that event. And then in particular in my community, I didn't work on this directly, but I was also a campus engagement election project fellow. So the other fellow and I, we both identify in the Asian community. She did a lot of outreach. I just gave her a little bit of guidance and a push, but she was able to host like a voter education event in the Vietnamese community. I know I kind of wish I did something like that, but I'm hoping for midterms, like especially like, translating those materials into their respective languages, with the help of maybe the external voting organizations, would come a long way. But I did, especially, gearing up for the 2020 elections, I worked with OCA, the Asian Pacific Advocates Group, to help register, especially, members in the Asian Pacific Islander community to register to go out and vote. We noticed that they're kind of the demographics that, usually that I've personally seen, like don't have a motivation to vote, but we were trying to increase that motivation within that community. So I know that's one of the goals that I definitely have more for 2022 is to, help the groups that aren't represented, have their voices being heard.
I love that. That's really great to hear. Christina, how about you?
Yeah, if I had to say what my identity as an organizer would be, I really just like to see myself as a connector. I don't consider myself someone who wants people to vote because I want them to. I want people to vote because they want to. And so it's really important to listen to what matters to people and to be able to connect that to voting and how they can get those outcomes through voting. And then also, I just like to look at the bigger picture in my organizing. So I never want people to think that I'm asking them to vote and that's it. Or I'll come around every November and say, hey, vote, and then I'm gone. No, like I want people to know that civic engagement is a year-round process. There is a space for everyone in this. You don't have to be a political science major. You don't have to wear a vote t-shirt to care about the issues that are important in our community. And there's a space for everyone. So that's my goal as an organizer.
I love that. I love that. It's really important to be relational in your organizing and not transactional. That's how you create sustainable organizing principles. So I really love to hear that. Brandon, how about you?
Wonderful. So my leadership, I tend to stay my authentic self, as I touched on earlier. Every space I go into, I'm myself. If you're authentic self in every way you do, you're not. People won't look at you a certain way, like, okay, he's in my face because he just want me to go vote. No, I touch on so many different concepts and so many different methods which are just going around on campus. So I'm more than just civic engagement and the democratic process. I touch on the food insecurity awareness. I touch on so many different factors and I'm a part of so much on campus, then people won't know that I'm just going around talking about voter education. Yes, it's something that we need to have, but also it's something that you need to do as your civic duty, but also having casual dialogue with each other, going up to someone, just talking about engaging each other in conversation that needs to have, talk about different pressing issues which are going on in communities back home, talking about different bills which are on the table and different current events. So yeah, just taking the initiative to create spaces to where people can come and we can discuss so many different things which are going on in the community, voter education, civic engagement, so much which are going on without creating a program so they won't be suppressed. So they won't feel like, oh, I have to come to this or I'm nervous to go to this because I don't want to talk about this in a space full of so many people that I don't know. So basically just offering that assistance and being my authentic self in every way.
I love to hear that, and just having an open door policy when it comes to civic engagement, whatever that looks like for someone, that really, I can see how that can be really powerful. Tamia, in our last minute, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I completely agree with what all of you have just said. And I think it especially is important to recognize on predominantly white campuses. I think, two of our AGF ambassadors are people of color, women of color. And for us in creating our podcast, even that was something that we really wanted to highlight was intersectionality and uplifting other people with you. So during all of the Heritage Months and in Trans Day of Visibility, just all of the different events that happened throughout this year, we were trying to uplift other activists and people who are talking about these issues and trying to raise awareness about how people are perceiving the things that are happening in our world. I completely agree with Brandon. I'm a journalist, so we were trying to push current events out all the time, trying to make people aware of what was happening in our country, and also just trying to engage them in a conversation in a way that did feel inclusive and allowed them opportunities to learn. And so for us, I think, that's the focal point, and that's what's so important about being a person of color at the forefront of this movement, is that you have an opportunity to let other people in and really teach them a lot about the experiences that you have had and how that shapes your political identity and the way that you engage in political conversations. And I think that's so exciting and such a privilege.
I love that. Thank you all so much for the work that you do. I hope that you know that without you, we don't have a democratic future, and that you're doing the best work that you possibly can on all of your campuses. Thank you for continuing to push out civic engagement, whatever that looks like for each individual student. And thank you for your leadership and your service. So thank you for talking about the power of youth, and I hope that this session was informative.